The first thing that we're going to do right now is we're going to hear from Todd Gruhn, who's an assistant superintendent from Trenton ISD, and I'm going to have him share his webcam in a moment, and then also make him presenter so that he can share what he wants to share with you. These are all of our sponsors. We want to heartily acknowledge them for letting us be on the virtual road with this event series and serve all the EduJedi and all our readership nationally. So again, Todd Gruhn is going to share our story at Trenton ISD. I'm going to make sure that you have the screen. You ready, Todd?
I'm ready.
Okay, good. Okay, I'm making you presenter. 3, 2, 1. Okay, you're presenter. And thanks for being with us today. We're excited.
You see my presentation now?
Yes, we do. Okay, I'm gonna mute myself. It's you have the control.
All right, very good.
Okay.
Hope everyone is doing well today. Like Melanie said, I'm Todd Gruhn. I'm the Assistant Superintendent and Chief Technology Officer at Trenton ISD. Trenton is about 40 minutes northeast of Dallas. I'll tell you a little about Trenton ISD. We're a 2A, bordering on 3A, fast growth pre-K through 12 district in North Texas. I initially came to the district in the spring of 2017. In fall of 2018, we had 560 students. We now have 715, and we are still getting students enrolled every week. So we have about 100 staff members, ranging from classroom assistants to teachers to administrators. And we are a G Suite enterprise for education district. So we try to live in the Google world as much as we can. And as we talk about infrastructure here in a few minutes, you'll see that we try to do that with the hardware that we use. So a little about me. Like I said, I'm currently serving as Assistant Superintendent CTO. I oversee career and technical education. Operations, so our school operations like custodial maintenance, food services, and transportation. I oversee safety and technology. I came to this district as the Director of Technology in the spring of 2017. Prior to coming to Trenton, I served in Sherman ISD. One second, let me mute my phone here. Served in Sherman ISD as their Director of CTE. And prior to becoming Director of CTE, I taught computer science, math, and physics. Worked in education for 10 years now. Before I got into education, I worked in IT in the DFW and Houston area. I mainly focused on networking and servers, but kind of done a little bit of everything when it comes to IT and software development. So what have we learned during the pandemic? Ultimately, we have learned to be flexible. We have learned to kind of roll with the punches. It seems like every day is something different. I know when we were having our weekly administration meetings during the summer, it seemed like every time we met, the state had changed another way of classifying this or put a new restriction on that. And, we'd have to go back and redo our plans. We'd have to resubmit things to TEA. And basically, flexibility is key. And that's sort of become our mantra this year, from students to administration. But we have found that students will rise to expectations if we establish those expectations, whether they're remote or if they're face-to-face. Our teachers have been really, really good at being patient, at kind of learning to look at the big picture when it comes to working with students. We have not had to shut down the entire district yet due to a COVID infection, but we have had to shut a couple of campuses down for a few days because we are so small, you know, even having the JV football team out is a big enough number that we really have to think about shifting everybody over to a remote learning modality. So we've learned a few things. We're going to learn more. The year's not over yet, but we've kind of narrowed what is helping us be successful down to 3 things, and I'll talk about those a little more in depth here in a minute. But they're adequate technology infrastructure, focusing on our human infrastructure, and maintaining good relationships with vendors. And before I move on, if anyone is wanting to load a copy of this presentation on your own, please see the shortened link down in the corner. All right. So the first thing is technology infrastructure. Let me put this on Do Not Disturb for a second. Okay, technology infrastructure. Prior to going into what we had to deal with COVID, we were a one-to-one district from grades 5 through 12. Those students all had Chromebooks, and they took the Chromebooks home with them. From pre-K to grade 4, we had enough devices to be considered one-to-one, but those devices stayed at school, either on carts or sort of in a shared arrangement. Each student didn't have a device assigned to them. One of the things that we have done since is our pre-K through 4th grade. We are still using a similar model that we used before, but instead of every student, instead of the Chromebooks being assigned to the teacher and the cart, they are now assigned to the student. They just leave them at school. And we've had a few occasions where we've had students need to go remote. It makes it very simple because the Chromebook is already checked out to them. We just make arrangements with the teacher to get that device. We have plenty of spare chargers around. We grab that for them. We arrange a pickup or we arrange a drop off when we're doing meal drop off, and we get the device to the student. So far this year at our elementary school, we have about 305 students on that campus, and we have probably distributed back and forth about 25 to 30 Chromebooks that way. It really helps having the library involved with record keeping and making sure things get checked in and out through the library system. With our students having access to devices, we don't really have to worry about them not having something to work on at home. What we have to worry about is their internet service. We are a very rural area, and although a lot of our homes have internet access, all of the internet access in this area is it's based on wireless technology. Some of it is pricey. The prices have gone down, but we do have students that their only way to get to the internet at home is a cell phone. For that reason, we made the decision to use both Google Classroom for our higher grades and then Seesaw for our lower grades because of the ease of access to be able to work in Seesaw on the cell phones. We also worked with our local ISPs to get some public internet access areas set up. We added outdoor access points to all of our campuses. So students, whether they're in pre-K or in grade 12, if they're remote students, they can come up and they can sit in their car. They can work on what they need to work on. We also have offline sync with our Chromebooks to where they can come and sit for 5 minutes and let everything sync, and then they can go back home and work and come do the same thing in the afternoon or in the morning. We're trying to make things as accessible as possible without relying completely on hotspots. Because as a lot of you know, we have a big problem in getting some of those technology resources. We were very fortunate in that we started trying to obtain hotspots early. We ended up not taking the offer that TEA made to work with us to get hotspots because we knew that it was going to be a while before that equipment came in, and we just went ahead and made the investment on some hotspots, and that has paid up. That's paid off. Our students have had hotspots now for about 3 weeks, whereas I know a lot of districts are still waiting on those hotspots. So you kind of have to ask yourself, how are the students going to access resources? Because everyone in our state, at least in administration and TEA, has made it very clear that what happened in the spring was not the expectation for the fall, and in order to provide that caliber of education that everyone was looking for, it was going to take internet access. And then another problem that we have ran into is, did we have adequate bandwidth up and down to be able to accommodate all of these Hangouts or Zoom sessions? We primarily use Google Hangouts. We do have some staff things that we use Zoom for, but whenever you've got all of your teachers on and recording lessons at about the same time, you really have to think about not only that download speed but that upload speed. And fortunately, we were thinking ahead in that as well, and we are part of a fiber consortium through our service center, and we have a 10 gig connection up and down with the Google Cloud, and that's really come in handy during some of these peak bandwidth times. Okay, so in addition to technology infrastructure, you've got to think about your human infrastructure. How is your department organized? Okay, prior to this school year, and prior to my promotion and added responsibilities, it was me, and I had a instructional technology coordinator. The instructional technology coordinator, her responsibilities were, working with teachers to get Google Classroom set up, effectively using our Google tools. She was not very involved in the nuts and bolts. Well, all of this came around, and both sides of the equation definitely had some added importance, because not only did you need the training, not only did you need the support in helping teachers be successful in implementing technology, but the nuts and bolts took on a whole new meaning when everybody was trying to get connected. So we really had to think about how we organized our department, and we actually brought the libraries and the library assistants sort of under my supervision, and we trained them on basic Chromebook triage and being the first line of defense when people call in to the help desk. So think about, how is your department organized? Will you need outside help? I know all of us can always use help, but we ran into funding problems. The money just was not there, so we had to kind of get creative. Is your staff flexible? You know, fortunately for us, you know, we're all on the same page and we know the importance of what we're doing. But you know, if you've got someone that's been in a role for several years that is not a customer-facing role, or they are not accustomed to providing support, you may run into some friction there when you're trying to ask them to take on that new role. Are you focused on customer service? Do you need to train staff on interacting with end users? You know, we all did some extra training through our LMS called EduHero that we use through another regional service center. We went back and we looked at some customer service training. You know, it's been quite a while since I have gone through some of the training on, you know, being empathetic to your users and kind of understanding and being patient and just trying to put yourself where they are. You know, when we talk to students, when their technology isn't working, they're stressed out. Teachers, when their technology isn't working, they're stressed out. What can you do to de-escalate any situation that you may have, and try to get everybody on the same page? And then another thing to look at with human infrastructure is, are you prepared to meet training needs? We have a new superintendent this year. We have two new administrators at different campuses, and we have a lot of new teachers. Some of them have never taught in the Google ecosystem before, so Google Classroom was new, using Gmail, using slides. How are you going to meet those training needs? We had some of that training in place, but you know, we were not, before this year, we were not prepared to do virtual training at the scale that we needed to. So we relied on our partners through Region 6 in our training LMS to do some of the basic training exercises, like how to do Gmail and how to do Google Docs and that type of thing. And then we focused on more in-depth, how do we apply this to our classroom? But that's something you have to think about whenever you're trying to make your hybrid or remote program as successful as possible. Never neglect the training. You know, I learned that in the corporate world, and it certainly rings true in education. You never forget that the training needs have to definitely be paramount for you to have success in your organization. And then the last thing, and you know, I'm sure we've all experienced issues with vendors right now. Do you have multiple options for vendors? Okay. If I call CDW and they're out of stock on an item and they don't predict getting any more in until December, you know, do I have a backup, or is everybody in the same situation? The district that I previously worked in, we had that issue with several different items that we used fairly regularly in the CTE program, and we had to go out and we had to do another RFP to get some more vendors involved. But you need to have some redundancy in your vendor system, because you know, right now everybody is struggling for stock, and sometimes it helps to just cast a net out there and see what your vendors can do to try to work with you in getting you what you need. Do you maintain lines of communication with your vendors? Okay, do you have you let them know of projects coming up, or if you see a need coming down the pipeline, do you kind of give them a heads up? I know the person that I work with through CDW, we email each other about weekly, just to he kind of gives me an idea of how stock levels are working, and I kind of let him know what we've got coming down the pipeline. And that's one of the reasons that CDW is my primary one of my primary vendors, because of that open line of communication. You have other staff in your department that know which vendors to use. We have a Google Sheet where we keep track of all of our vendors, where if I'm out and we need to order a projector bulb, she can access that Google Sheet. She can find projector bulb on there, and she can find our vendor and our vendor contact information. That's another way to have some redundancy there. And then, lately, long lead times and supply chain delays, those were really not a part of my normal vocabulary. But when Dell is telling you that they're not going to be able to ship Chromebooks till January, there are some significant lead times and delays there. So you've got to plan accordingly. Maybe you wait a little longer to retire some of those old Chromebooks. One thing that we did to kind of boost the amount of spares that we had, we used Cloud Ready, and we made our spares with some old laptops for Chromebooks. They're not small, they're not easy to carry around, but when the students are using them in class, they at least have a device that they can use while theirs is out for repair. So, kind of to wind things down here, basically, we all still have work to do, but as long as we're moving forward and we're making progress, I know when I look at the amount of help desk tickets that I have, it's a downward trending graph, and that's a good thing. We're seeing less and less repeat problems. We have established our routines. We've established our procedures with staff and students. So now we can actually go out and we can provide support and not just training. So now in the beginning, we had Seesaw being brought on board. That was new for some of our teachers. We're currently experiencing issues with our with our grade book. When we're talking about the problems that we have in our environment right now, you have to really focus on getting that training piece in there, so your staff and your students know how to react to different problems. And then, ultimately, our goal should be student success, whether they're face-to-face students or remote. I personally, I actually teach a couple of classes because we're small enough that I can still teach a couple computer classes, and my students are almost completely remote right now because of the group of students that I have, and as I can see the challenges that our teachers are facing, but that makes forming those relationships and establishing great customer service makes that need even greater when our students aren't here. But we're here for the long haul. We're going to do whatever it takes to make our students and staff successful. We've had a great year so far, and I think it's only going to get better. I believe that this school year is going to go down in the books as probably the most challenging, but probably one of the most gratifying that we've had. So, any questions?
Yes, I had a question. Do you require students' cameras to be showing their faces when they're remote? Are there some standard operating procedures that y'all enforce in your district?
Tess, can you introduce yourself and where you're from?
Yes, I'm Tess Lawrence, and I'm actually from Gulfport, Mississippi. We're out today because of a hurricane.
Oh, ho, ho. Well, we are generally asking our teachers to be very flexible with that. We have a very high economically disadvantaged population, and that becomes an issue with showing some of the students that are in their rooms. We ask the teachers to make sure that the students are comfortable doing that and not necessarily require it. The only time that we do require them to have their camera on is we have remote test proctoring that my department handles, and we ask them to have their camera on for that. But other than that, it's up to whatever is arranged between the teacher and the student.
Okay, thank you. We also have the remote, the testing, the proctored testing. But our district is requiring that their faces be shown, and we have had the same issues that you just brought up about the lower socioeconomic. I was just wondering about their rights and their protections. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, this is Leilani again, your host. Thank you, Tess. Let's make sure anybody else who has questions, raise your hand or type a question in and I'll call on you. Just so you know, there's places in the country right now that aren't allowing cameras because of FERPA, Family Education Privacy Rights Act, and things going on camera, right? And there is that socioeconomic thing. Some kids have been reportedly AWOL from joining because they're embarrassed of their backgrounds. So that becomes an issue. Have you guys surveyed this by chance with your parents?
We have, and the vast majority are okay with the use of the camera if there's an educational need for it. They don't necessarily want their students to be on camera all the time, but they do understand that sometimes that face-to-face virtually is needed for collaboration, and they know what their students are comfortable with, and we've had a couple that have gone through the channels of the campus administration and asked that their teachers not require them to use their cameras, and we're perfectly fine with that. And then when we do have remote testing with those students, we make sure that we only have one-on-one testing with those, so they're not a part of a group. So it is just the test proctor that would see them at that point. So.
Okay. Linda McDonald has a question. Linda, go ahead.
So what tools and strategies have you found that are successful in recruiting that student engagement, especially in that remote learning scenario?
And Linda, can you introduce where you're from?
I'm in Fort Worth area and I'm a retired teacher.
Okay.
Well, we all struggle with that student engagement piece. We are fortunate in that on our campuses, we have some fantastic classroom assistants and educational aides that have agreed to almost work as liaisons with the teachers in making sure that we reach students. We also have a daily check-in time that we use with some of our staff members that are keeping track of our remote attendance. We use a lot of the Google tools to reach back and forth to the students and try to keep them engaged. But we're not 100% there. just like I don't think any district is. But we're working with the tools that we have.
Tiffany, that's your, yeah. Tiffany, I think you're reverbing. You might want to move your phone away. Okay, I'm gonna have to mute you. Oh, there you go. You muted yourself. Okay, continue, Todd. I think you didn't finish your thought.
Well, I was just saying we have a lot of avenues that we are using to try to have that personal touch and not dump it all on the teacher. Because I think in the spring that happened in a lot of places, and a lot of students suffered because the teachers they had so many students that they had to interact with that they just weren't able to spend adequate time with them. But it's a battle. It really is, and the engagement also, it comes in waves, and the peaks in engagement always seem to happen when grades are due. But it's like that with the face-to-face students as well. So hopefully that answered your question in a roundabout way.
Yeah, and then Tiffany Jones has another question for you. Tiffany, you can unmute yourself.
Yes, we've been in school for about 4 weeks now, and we are toying with the idea of the video proctoring as well. You are a Google school just like we are. Are you just using appointment slots for Google Meets, or are you doing something differently for that proctoring service?
Well, we are using Google Meets, but I am also using some software through Securely that allows me to monitor the Chromebook screens. We've found that when we try to have students join with a Meet and share the screen, we quickly kind of peg the limitations out after about 2 or 3 students. So to test in larger groups, we have them join a Google Meet so we can see them, but then I'm also using, it's called Tech Pilot Labs through Securely, to view their Chromebook screens. Now, one thing that we found early on, it took us about 3 weeks to kind of get this down, was we had teachers that were using the lock screen mode for their tests on Google Forms, which that works great when you're doing an in-class test. But when we're doing the remote proctoring, whenever they opened up the test that was in the locked mode, it killed the tab for Google Meet, and then it also killed the extension that we were using for Tech Pilot Labs. So basically, we were in the dark while they were taking the test. So now we're having our teachers do them a little bit differently, but we've found that sending out appointment slots and then using that Meet link in the appointment slot and having that extension on the Chromebooks, that's kind of making it easier on us to do multiple remote administrations multiple times during the week.
Awesome, thank you. We use GoGuardian, and so it kind of sounds the same.
Yes, you can do the same thing with GoGuardian.
Awesome, thank you so much for sharing. Appreciate it.
Don't see any other questions right now, so I want to ask some of my own, if you don't mind. This is Leilani again. What about the structure overall? I mean, have you guys sort of moved brick and mortar online where it's a lot of Google Meet meetings all day long? And what's the impact of that? How's your structure working? Did block schedule? Are you doing AB days, AB weeks, or anything different?
We have not changed our overall structure. just simply because we have very limited personnel to
Okay.
provide the classroom instruction. Right now, we're at about 25% remote, 75% face-to-face. Our primary remote instruction is asynchronous, just because of the challenges of teachers having a few remote students and still having a class and being able to live stream the class during a normal class period. So we are primarily asynchronous. We started with some synchronous sessions early, but we realized that was just going to be way too much on the staff that we had. And given that we do not have a lot of faith in funding with the next legislative session, so going out and hiring more teachers was just not an option for us right now. So we're working with primarily asynchronous and then face-to-face students at about a 25%, 75% ratio.
Okay. Yeah. So if you've moved to that much asynchronous, what about the teacher planning? What have you seen happening over the summer and then now with school back?
Well, the biggest challenge that it seems our teachers have had is providing consistency and fidelity between the face-to-face and the asynchronous classes. We've got a lot of teachers that have brought in some elements of Google Classroom and using the LMS actually with their face-to-face kids. Those have seemed to be the more successful, that are reaching all of their students. And then we have some other teachers that are still trying to manage, to run their face-to-face like they always have, and then sort of get the material to the remote students and record more lessons. And as far as teacher planning goes, the teachers that are really putting in the time on the front end, planning their lessons and getting the resources out ahead of time, they're spending maybe 20 to 25 minutes after school every day recording lessons. Some other teachers, depending on the other duties that they have, they may work for an hour or so after school to get their lessons on board. And because some of our teachers, being in a small school district, some of our teachers may have 5 or 6 preps. So they've been very open to asking for help when they need help, and we try to do as much as we can to help them use their time efficiently, and not necessarily reinvent the wheel. But for the most part, I think each teacher uses a different methodology in planning to serve both their remote and their face-to-face students.
Okay, so you're describing sort of an A-B road. Some are remote, meaning they don't join synchronous.
Correct.
And then some are synchronous. Wow, that's a lot for teachers. Just wondering if you're hearing things like people are scheduling Zoom meetings over the top of each other. For your instance, be Google Meets, and other sort of anomalies now in a hybrid sort of structure having to do with the use of time.
We've really not heard of many issues with that, because part of what our PLCs are being used for on our campuses is making sure that we don't have that overlap.
Okay.
For instance, the science teachers have agreed to do their meets on these days, the math teachers on these days, and we're small enough that we can make that work. I don't necessarily know that that would work in a larger school district. But we have the ability to be flexible and to work around schedules. And then there are some of our teachers that are holding Google Meets and Hangouts later in the day after athletics and things like that to be able to reach all of their students.
Okay.
Did I answer your question? Sorry about that.
Yeah, you did, Todd. Sorry, Lonnie lost audio for a second. This is Doug, the COO with the Learning Council. Okay, good. I'm going to just check the dashboard to see if there's any other questions for you here. Okay, Todd, it looks like there's not any questions currently. I do have a question for you. At what point do you think for your school you feel you need to reach, or what you need to have in place to make it really successful in this virtual time / hybrid time that we're going through?
Well, I think ultimately it's going to come down to connectivity and not having a patchwork system of getting our students connected, whether that's whether there's some sort of municipal broadband system that's put in place, or giving us the ability through E-rate to be able to come up with some affordable community broadband systems. It's that's really what our issue is right now, because we can control connectivity here. We can provide devices all day long, but if they're not in a home environment that has internet access and they don't have a way to get up here to use our internet, they're always going to be behind. And I'm sure that most other districts share in that concern and having that as one of their big needs. But in looking at what we have and what we're able to offer students, that's our primary need, is just making sure everybody can get connected with a consistent and reliable internet connection, because you never know when we're going to have to switch from one modality to another on a dime, and we don't want those kids that are relying on cell phones, or maybe they've got a hotspot at home that's out of data. We don't want those kids to have to suffer because of the lack of connectivity in the community and the lack of options.
Okay, this is Leilani. I have audio back. It was kind of mysterious. The internet sort of kicked me out for a second. All right. So this has been an awesome presentation. I don't see any other questions coming in. So I just want to use up these last couple of minutes to just sort of ask you what's happened with your leadership, and then we're going to pull on Debbie Jensen from Stay Mobile to do a little sharing, and we're going to show a video. So leadership wise, what happened at the beginning? Like how did things get sort of put together?
Well, we have always had a very strong district leadership team. We've always been a very cohesive group, and with our outgoing superintendent retiring in the spring, and us knowing that some other transitions were going to happen, it was a good time for us to kind of start from scratch and really organizing our leadership team to be responsive and to be proactive when it came to knowing what our students would need. We had a good time for experimentation in the spring, and I think we knew a lot more of what didn't work than what worked, but that gave us a good foundation on where to start building for the fall. And that's part of the reason why we started placing orders early, and we were trying to get ahead of the curve with that. And I think there are some situations where that's really helped as far as devices and hotspots and some other hardware type things go.
Yeah, I've heard that. And I've also heard that Lenovo and HP and Dell have prioritized K-12 over all other sectors. They're trying to make sure all these fulfill. I think HP moved 18 million machines in under 3 months into the market. It was an amazing moment. I think a lot of them were really doing their best to step up, but there was also shipping issues. Yeah, so this is really good. So I'm glad you guys all sort of came together. It's probably been sort of an emotional moment, everybody sort of huddling and, getting together and saying, let's go, let's do this thing.
It has. A lot of times when you have new leadership in a district, you have everybody sort of goes out on a retreat for a ropes course or something like that. But we've worked together so much over this summer that I don't think we could have built much more confidence in each other going out and doing something like that. So it's been a good experience for us.
That's good. That's great. It's really great to hear all that. Well, good. Well, thank you so much for sharing, and feel free to stay on. I'm going to talk later after this next lunch and learn hour of just open discussion. I'm going to ask, I'm going to unmute everybody and have everybody share webcam. They're coming into this webinar from all over the country right now, and a lot of people from Oklahoma and North Texas. But I'm going to, share all about what's happening with the structures, the hybrid structures nationally, what our research is showing is going on, and then what we see as the technology future that's coalescing behind the scenes, just looking at the investment community and some of the innovations coming out. So feel free to, yourself take a break, come back in as much as you want. But I'm going to have you self-mute and take your webcam off now. And I'm saying thank you again so very much. Yeah, thanks.